is it Eric M. Blake says more questions. I'm going to do one more because you asked nicely. You used a lot of exclamation points anyway, and that's good enough for me. One more, and then I'm going to split. Hey, look at Cheryl Toomey. What do you think of the walk away campaign? Do you think it could be an effective tool to flip Democrats, or at the very least convince them to walk away from their party? I think it's absolutely excellent. Now, a person in my social circle, a person of known moral turpitude and miscreancy, has told me that the walk-away video has been seen by 2 billion people, which I found incredible then, and on YouTube I only found several 100,000. I don't know if it's true. I wouldn't be surprised if it was true, but 2 billion is a quarter of the world's population and 7 times the population of this country. It is a real thing, and it should scare the daylights out of the Democrats, because what it means is, as they asymptotically, is this a bingo point? Asymptotically, as the left has to do more and more and more work to get less and less and less result, they have to push further and further. They have to have victims all the time, and so as they get further and further out into the weeds, where somebody's feelings are hurt by somebody's Halloween costume and cause them to cry, as this becomes all the injustice that's left for them to work on, because real injustice is largely gone in this society. So as they get more and more hysterical about smaller and smaller things, regular people who don't have any interest in politics, and I was one of them, and I wish I didn't have to be involved with it, but I am, because I want nothing to do with politics, but politics wants to do with me all the time. So the vast bulk of people who are not terribly politically interested are starting to realize that the people that they're voting with, the Democratic Party, is more and more being represented by folks like Antifa, and they are the ones who are throwing the stones and smashing the windows, and they are the ones who are causing the riots, and they're the ones that are burning down colleges if somebody comes to a university who has a different opinion than you. And most people are people of goodwill, and so the walk-away movement is a halfway step, and I'm perfectly fine with it being a halfway step, and I'm perfectly happy if it doesn't become anything more than that, because if you walk away from being a Democrat, you take away 1 Democratic vote. But if you walk away from being a Democrat and you become a Republican, now you've moved 2 votes. You've given them 1 less, and you've given your side 1 more. It's an enormously powerful thing. And I'm not asking people to become Republicans, because I can barely stand the term myself. It's been just so horribly disappointing. But if you are ready to walk away from the Democratic Party, it means you may still be a liberal, but you're not a progressive. And you can argue with actual liberals, with people of goodwill. The Democratic Party used to be a party that had a different view of America and a different view on how to get there. But they were Americans, and we all said the same pledge and sang the same national anthem. Now, one party does the pledge and the national anthem, and the other party, if they had an event where the Pledge of Allegiance was read, they'd lose their entire audience. They'd walk out. I have recycled this joke many times, but when we go to conservative events and the thing starts with the pledge or the national anthem, usually my first words are, well, we say the national anthem, or we say the Pledge of Allegiance because it means a lot to us and stuff, but it's also a security measure. Because saying the Pledge of Allegiance means that if there's any progressives secretly in the audience, then their skin will burst into flames, and a giant sulfurous hole will appear, and they will be pulled down into the nether regions from whence they came. Yeah, and just checking in on the comments again, Trevor, hey Trevor, says, I can see a liberal becoming conservative, but not the other way around. Evan Sayed and I have had a conversation about this at length, and we don't know of anybody. I'm not saying there isn't anybody. There are 1 or 2, but we don't know anybody who was a conservative and became a liberal. But we all know lots of people, ourselves included, who used to call themselves liberal and are now calling themselves conservative. And what is becoming clear to me is that I didn't change and Evan didn't change, really. We were always in favor of the same kind of things. It's just that the party called the Democratic Party has just moved so far to the left. November of this year will be a very, 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 very interesting year. Everybody always says that this election is the most important election of your life. The most important election of my life will be, has been, and I will be absolutely gobsmacked if I'm wrong. The most important election of my entire life, if I live to be 150, will be the 2016 presidential election. No question, none, zero. That was the most important election in my lifetime. Because if Hillary Clinton had won, I'm not sure that the country can be recovered anyway when you see how bad this rotten corruption is. But if Hillary had been president, it would just be over. That's all there is to it. She would have strangled whatever resistance was left, and that would have been it. So November is going to be very interesting, very interesting. If you take the political scene out of it and you wash away the political matrix, we should be expecting to take a bath, because traditionally the midterm elections, the off-year elections, are a swing back against the presidential election. So if you have a Democratic president elected, then 2 years later you're likely to have a Republican sweep, and vice versa. Now, if it turns out that we see a blue wave in November, which I was certain was going to be the case 5-6 months ago, if we see a big blue wave, then the left is in fact really that Donald Trump's presidency essentially is the end of the whole game as we understand it. However, I'm beginning to think that may not be the case. And I'll tell you one thing: if it's anything less than a blue wave, I mean a big blue sweep, if it's modest Democratic gains, that's a huge win. And if it turns out that some miracle happens, I don't want to call it because I don't want to jinx it, but if it turns out that that Republicans hold seats or even get gains, and doesn't seem to be the case based on what we've seen so far, but just for the sake of it, then the left is done. I think they're really finished. So the walk-away movement is a big lever in terms of moving that. Now, there's something else that's a lever, and that is the fact that the pop culture, which doesn't think about politics, they're all progressives, and they're all socialists, and they all support Bernie. They don't know why, and they don't really believe it, but they do it. Those people are on fire, enraged at the left because the left has killed Star Wars. And I think the firewall that needs to be written about this when I get back would look something like this. I'd say, welcome to the walkaway movement. I'm not telling you that you should become a conservative, but you will find if you start talking to them that we're not the people that you thought that we were. And then you have to ask yourself, why were you told what you were told about us? And I think the most powerful argument I can use there is to say, this is what they do. They control, they try very hard to control your thinking. And there's a crystal clear example of all of this, and we've all seen it. They rewrite history, and the way that we know that they do this is not through the last Star Wars movie, which basically destroyed the franchise by undermining so much of it. But we know this is how the left worked because we can go back to the, late 80s or early 90s, something like that. When in one of the re-releases of the original Star Wars movie, the first time they brought it in, they added all this junky computer graphics and made it worse. But in that re-release of the original Star Wars, A New Hope, it is re-edited and digitally treated in such a way that Greedo shoots at Han before Han shoots. So they're sitting about as far away as you and I are from the camera, and Greedo shoots and it hits the wall up here, you know. He misses by, 30 degrees, 2 feet away. And by the way, in that re-edit, the shooting is so fast. It's like, it's essentially simultaneous. But my point in the firewall would be this, to young people who are thinking about the walkaway movement. Han did shoot first. And he shot first because he was using his gun to defend his life. The left found that idea repulsive after the fact. 10 years, 15 years after Star Wars was shot, they decided politically that they just didn't think that was a good idea. So instead of saying, well, we don't think it's a good idea, let's make a new movie where he doesn't shoot first and he gets killed by Greedo and splattered against the wall, and then his friends can have a cocktail party and talk about how virtuous they are. But instead of doing that, instead of making a new movie that represents their new values, they went back and they rewrite history. They rewrite history. Now, Eric says that Chris Pratt has moved the needle with his MTV speech and the cheers he got. I have not heard anything about his MTV speech. I need to look at that because I think, well, there's no question Chris Pratt is a conservative, and there's no question he's the hottest property in the world right now. If Chris Pratt were to come out in favor of Donald Trump the way that Kanye West did, I think the left would be in very, very, very serious trouble. Very, very serious trouble. That's why they panicked. Apparently, Obama, president of the United States, former president of the United States, called Kanye West up and said, you can't say nice things about Donald Trump. You just can't do it. And Kanye West, to his credit, I am not a fan, but to his credit, said, you don't get to tell me what to think, Mr. President. And why are you trying to tell me what to think, by the way? That, I will look at that speech. And I will do that when I get back. Eric says an interviewer asked J.J. Abrams who shot first, and J.J. said, Han. Why do you ask? If you've seen the new Han Solo movie, if you haven't seen it yet, then spoiler alert, But if you haven't seen it yet, you're not going to. The Han Solo movie has a climax, and the climax is, you're damn right Han shot first. He shoots first. And that is a rebellion against political correctness. That movie was better than, much better than The Last Jedi. I'm reading about Chris Pratt's speech and how it wasn't preachy. It was just basically saying what he believed in the same way kind of Jordan Peterson does, and Charles Murray and all the rest. There are times when I begin to feel like there may, in fact, not only be cracks in this monolithic, progressive march into hell, not only cracks in this kind of, TMA1 kind of, obsidian surface, this impenetrable, jet black wall of perfect, integrity, this left's owning of the culture and the message and everything. There are times not only when I see cracks, but there are times when I feel like, this thing is hollow. This thing is hollow. And like all hollow things, it looks solid. But if you lean on it hard enough, it doesn't just slowly give way. It just collapses, utterly collapses. This is called a preference cascade. It's the same story at the end of, this may be a bingo word too, Emperor's New Clothes. It's not, the boy says he's not wearing any clothes, and it's not like a long and in-depth discussion ensues. It's not like there's, 3 months of debate on the subject. It's instantaneous. Everybody's perception shifts instantly because somebody has spoken the truth, and everybody always agreed with everybody else, and everybody's providing this. It's like a giant Ponzi scheme of social proof where I don't see the clothes, but I don't want to be the only person who doesn't see the clothes. So I say, oh, look at the beautiful clothes. And you hear me say that, and you think, well, he can't be lying, and that person can't be lying, and that person can't be lying. I must be the only person who doesn't see the clothes. So I'd better say, oh, look at the wonderful clothes. And it's a giant bootstrapping Ponzi game of social proof. And that can go down very, very fast. That can go down very, very fast. In fact, Instapundit Glenn Reynolds wrote about this, and I don't remember the theory. I wish I'd followed up on it a little more at the time. I want to say this was 6 years ago, somewhere around early 2010s, and I think it was maybe 2009, something like that. And he was talking about, which is, my God, 9 years ago. Wow. We were talking about the failed Iranian Green Revolution in 2009, and psychologists have studied what effect repression has on populations. And basically, if I understand the theory correctly, it seems to make a kind of sense. The more you repress a society, the faster, the harder, and the more thoroughly it falls. And that makes perfect sense to me. So that's it, I think. There's a discussion going on in the comment section about fanboys dissing the Solo movie, and the Solo movie was much better than the Star Wars fans give it credit for, and saying, you know, they should have given it a chance and seen the movie. And my answer to you guys is that you're both right and you're both wrong. It is a better movie than they gave it credit for, but they absolutely had to do what they did. It was their pushback that I have no doubt that the pushback against Last Jedi affected the Solo movie in a way that's positive for us. In fact, that Han shot first moment is so anti-PC that it was almost breathtaking. If it had been delivered by that other actor, I would have lost my mind over it. Just been so happy. But they had to do it, and that it was a boycott. And the whole purpose of a boycott is you don't go. You don't go and then decide not to go. You don't go. You don't give them the money. The boycott had to happen. And if you're trying to say, well, it hurt a good movie, well, okay, that's what boycotts are. They're sledgehammers. They're not scalpels. We've had sanctions against Russia, which I think were certainly justified by Putin's actions, but they harm the people. They harm are the average Russian citizens, and not so much they put pressure on Putin, but his life's not affected by sanctions, but the lives and survival of ordinary Russians or Iranians and so on is. But the boycott had to happen because it had to hurt enough. No one ever thought that you would hear this sentence, that this Star Wars movie was a flop. But that's how badly they've tarnished the brand, and Solo was a flop, and the reason it was a flop is largely due to the fact that the hardcore Star Trek fans not only didn't go 17 times, they didn't go at all. And I really admire that. If you're saying, though, the film suffered, unjustly, it's a film. It's not a person. Hey, Eric, I don't believe in punishing the innocent for the crimes of the guilty either. But since you don't have the ability to go in there and personally take Kathleen Kennedy by the neck and shake some sense into her, you are left with your individual personal vote. My individual personal vote is don't go see the movie. That's what the fanboys are saying. So they were right. They were right to do it. And Puddle Pirate says group punishment works. Ask any military veteran. Absolutely. In fact, the most effective form of discipline in the military anyway, and this is overwhelmingly powerful, is the idea that you punish everybody except for the guilty party. That is absolutely unbelievably effective. So I want to go back to, was it Full Metal Jacket, I guess, where Vincent D'Onofrio was playing the guy who was fat and couldn't do any of the physical stuff, and so when he couldn't do the push-ups, everybody in the platoon ended up having to do push-ups, and he had to sit there and eat donuts. Now that's not punishing the guilty; that's rewarding the guilty. But the purpose, in terms of, it is in fact the most effective punishment. It's the most effective punishment that you could do to him, is to not punish him, because not only does he lose whatever support he might have among his friends, he's not immune to this. He understands that it's his inactions are not just hurting himself, they're hurting the people around him. And that is a very, very powerful motivator when you live that close together with people and have that kind of bond and stuff. So anyway, at this point, I think I'm going to call it a day. or a night, and we are YouTube version. We are 1 hour and 38 minutes into this. That's long enough, for God's sakes. Well, as we say, ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Don't remember which episode this is. I want to say it's 189, 190, something like that. In any event, yeah, and just to wrap this up, as Simon says, you may go see Solo now. Go see it now. It's already tanked. They've had their bomb. There's talk about removing Kathleen Kennedy and all the rest of it. Mission accomplished. Now go see the movie. I still didn't like the lead actor very much. By the way, Red State Media guys said, and I don't think they were joking. They said the way you can monetize Star Wars is to not release it as a movie. You say it as a limited edition, and you print a very nice ticket, and you charge $150 for it. And absolutely, they get it. They would absolutely get it. They're Star Wars fans with thousands of dollars on their costumes. They would pay $150 to see a good Star Wars movie instantly. And he did the math. It was something like $2 billion or something per movie. Something, if you just got even if you throw the hardcore base away, you'd still get enough people to make it worth your while. So anyway, that's that. So I am going to shut things down here and upload this baby and get it up on YouTube and all the rest. And then we will see you again next week. Let's see. Oh, I'm going to Fantasy Fest. I'm going. That's a celebration in Key West. It's kind of a gay New Year's kind of thing, and this is not that. This is Freedom Fest in Las Vegas. We're going tomorrow. My lovely wife and I are driving out there. And a panel on Friday about Antifa, and then I think I'm the last guy. I think I'm the last guy in the convention on Saturday, so there'll be room. I've seen conventions on their last day, and it's a depressing thing, but I'm glad to be there, and it's going to be cool. So if you're in the area, if you're planning on going, if you are planning on going, come up and say hi. Definitely, I love meeting you guys. Is my favorite part of the job. Alrighty then. So yeah, so next week will be the 18th, and we're looking clear. So hopefully we'll see you then. I don't see any reason why not. And that'll do it for this episode of the Stratosphere Lounge, which may in fact be the last one on Ustream. We will see. But for our friends at watching this on YouTube, we're going to cut this one off first. And so we will see you next week.